To all the believers, God is everything. All right, everybody. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us again for another episode of Logos, Pathos, Ethos. I do appreciate you. We're going to give everyone a minute to come on in and join us in a few minutes, and we'll get started. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope everyone had a really good, good weekend so far. I hope everything in your life as well right now. I really do wish those good things your way. So we'll just wait maybe a minute or so, and then we'll get started. And if you would like, if you ever want to send us ideas, how to improve the platform, what you think about the platform, it can be good news, it can be bad news. Just let me know you're out there. Send an email to us. We're at Logos, Pathos, Ethos, the way, way, at gmail.com. So it's Logos, Pathos, Ethos, the way, at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for even taking the time to watch these podcasts. The reason we do these podcasts, thank you so much, Fat Boy. I appreciate you, brother, for being here. I'm not familiar with who you are, or at least by your screen name. I'm sure if I know you in real life, but that's fine. You don't have to tell me. We can keep it that way. But thank you so much. I appreciate you for joining me. Well, I was just telling everyone that the reason we do this platform is because I really do care about what I'm talking about. I really do care about some of the concerns that I bring to your attention, and hopefully some of these concerns I have you thinking about them and possibly taking action in whichever way you deem necessary. But at least be thinking. And this lack of critical thinking that has just been becoming increasingly, exponentially worse and worse and worse with every successive year, with every successive generation. It's just really concerning. And this is my, effort to try to still show the value in education, show the value in utilizing your mind in a productive, constructive manner. And this is our good faith attempt at that. So I apologize if it becomes boring at times, but again, uh, just bear with us. I assure you, thank you, my brother. Thank you. Yeah, I assure you, we will be improving the um, the content and the production as well. But until then, we're going to just rely on what all the great thinkers have relied on at the end of the day, their minds. And that's what I want. I want us to be directly engaged in this conversation tonight. We are going to talk about perspectives. And I think perspectives understood properly will show you the magnitude of how deeply influenced by our perspectives we really are. We're going to talk about how we develop those perspectives, like not how you see something, but rather we're going to talk about how you come to be able to see something the way you see it. After we talk about how we develop our perspectives, we're going to take a slight detour this time, and we're going to discuss the importance of being able to discern what is useful and what isn't useful without discarding the entire whole. And after we talk about the importance of that process of being able to extract the useful and separate it from the uselessness, then we're going to discuss something which I think is the most important part of this discussion, which is the application. Excuse me. Now, I know I just threw a lot on you. I get it. So we're going to take our time this go round. I'm hoping to wrap this up in about 30 minutes. And I really do. I'm late, but this is your. Oh, brother, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, brother Victor. Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. So I know this sounds like I threw a lot of different heavy things on you, but this is the beauty of learning. I guarantee you, if you stick with me during this entire conversation, everything that I just said to you is going to make so much sense. I have a personal belief, and this is just from me. I believe no matter what it is in your life you profess you think you know, I do not care how big or long the words are that you use when talking with me. What I want to know is whatever it is that you know, are you able to explain it to the point where a 5-year-old can understand it? If you cannot explain what you know to the point where a 5-year-old cannot understand it, stop talking, because you don't understand what you're thinking you understand. In practicing that exercise, it will cause you to become very humble. I assure you, if you walk with me step by step as I'm explaining some of these concepts, the point that I'm going to make at the end, it's going to resonate with you. If at any given point in time I say anything that doesn't make sense, at the bottom of your screen, we have a moderator in the room. At the bottom of your screen, type your question. Now, please make sure your question is on topic and relative. If it's not those two, so at the expense of those that are following along, we won't interrupt their learning. What we will do is we'll come back to your question at a later time. I assure you. But if it is relevant, I will explain to you or provide more clarity to the best of my ability, okay? So if you find that I'm speaking in very simplistic terms, it is not an insult towards you personally. But unless everybody understands, no one understands. And it is my sincere, deepest goal to make sure that I am speaking in a way that is clear and comprehensible. What is a perspective? A perspective is a particular way of considering something. Another way of saying that is perspective is the way we see the world from another's point of view. Now, we all have perspectives. If you are a free thinking individual on any level, you have a perspective. If you can see out of both eyes or use your senses to hear, or even, what have you, as long as you can pick up information from the environment, you have a perspective. A perspective is just a way that you see things. When you say, I am taking another person's perspective, what you're saying is, I am looking at it from their point of view. When you start looking at things from another person's point of view, That is called perspective taking. The definition of perspective taking is the act of perceiving a situation or understanding something from an alternative point of view, such as that of another person. Meaning, if I am sitting where I'm sitting right now, and you are sitting where you're sitting right now, watching me, if a car came through and just drove directly in between us, and another car hit it, you and I would turn in the direction of those cars and watch the accident occur. When it's time for the police officer to use us as witnesses and say, "Sir, number one, what did you see?" And I begin to tell them my account of the accident. My account of the accident is going to differ from you because you're across from me. And based on what you saw in terms of the accident we both witnessed, you and I are going to have discrepancies. We're going to have discrepancies in terms of what may have contributed towards the wreck, who was in the wrong, who moved first, who didn't slow down fast enough. What we will not disagree on is the fact that there was an accident. Correct? There was an accident, but we differ based on our account of that accident. It doesn't mean that you're lying any more than it means that I'm lying. What it means is, from our vantage point, we were able to see an accident from our point of view only. And based on the data that I have available, God willing that my both eyes work, ears work, nose smell works, taste, all my senses work, where I'm able to interpret the data correctly, I'm going to give you an account of what happened that is going to differ from your own. And neither one of us will go to jail for, neither one of us will go to jail for perjury, for lying. That won't happen. Because all we're doing is giving an account of what we saw from our position. Now, let's just say we apply that to human relations. Thank you, Aquarius Cross. Let's say we apply this to human relations. If you and I are in disagreement about something, as long as we maintain our individual perspectives and we're already arguing or arguing with each other, what's going to happen is we will never, ever come to any form of agreement. As a matter of fact, we may become disagreeable with each other because the other fails to see the other's point of view, because we're only caught up in our own perspectives. I got to tell y'all something. Perspective taking has saved my life on more accounts than you know. And when I say saved my life, I literally mean saved my life. When you take the perspective of another person, what that requires you to do is you have to totally abandon everything that you think you know, everything that you feel you know, everything you understand about what we're talking about. You have to abandon that and look at the same position, the same object from a different position, which means, let's say you, and I don't want to get nobody in trouble. Let's say you are having an argument with your significant other and you're late for dinner. Your significant other may be upset because you had plans to be home at 7 p.m. Dinner was ready at 7. You didn't get it till 7:30. Now the food is cold. The kids are mad. The dog is running around loose. The other comes home and says, I'm frustrated. I'm mad. I've been in traffic. I was trying to get to where I was trying to get to for 7 o'clock. My significant other had uh, food ready, and now it's 7:30. I know that they're going to be upset. I'm trying to get through traffic. People almost hit me. I had a hard day at work. And then when you come home and they're home and you get ready to have dinner, now you're having tension. You're having aggressive tendencies towards each other because one person is upset for one set of reasons and the other person is upset for their set of reasons. And when they converse or engage with each other, now they're in disagreement with each other and disagreeable with one another because this person here is upset because they can't get past the fact that they've had a hard day. And this person here is saying, I'm upset that I had expectations that were now ruined and I had a lot of things planned. Both are correct in and of themselves. When when they start to communicate with each other, that's when the problem starts. Because had both of them paused and said, wait a minute, let me look at it from your point of view. Wow, hard day at work. Wow, traffic, almost got into a wreck. Lady almost hit you. I get it. You was really trying to get home because you knew how upset I would be if you weren't here on time because I had something planned and here you are late. I get it. I understand. Notice how that will drop the other person's defenses. Because what you're saying is, I'm going to be considerate, not selfish, considerate that another person may have had their own challenges. And sometimes they need consolation. That changes the dynamic of the disagreement, of the problem. And you avoid a lot of issues if we take another person's perspective and see the same exact object from a different point of view and get out of our own heads and get into their positions so we can empathize with the person we was previously set on condemning. Perspective taking, because then you now understand why they did what they did. Now, I'm not saying this to excuse anyone's behavior for any reason. In terms of like, God forbid it be some kind of heinous activity or crime that's been occurred. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you show a lot more humility when you take the perspective of, hey, I know little Johnny just killed all these kids to school, but what you all don't know is little Johnny been living in a cage in his home, and his parents hadn't been feeding him, and he's been abused. And when he gets to school, he has nobody to talk to. When he goes back home, he goes back to that same dysfunctional environment where he's been abused. And then now the serial killer doesn't look so evil now, do they? Because we got a lot of kids that's in a similar situation. We're just ignoring the red flags. Perspective taking. Vital. How do we develop our perspectives? The way our perspectives are developed is in part due to our moral development. Moral development is basically your sense of right and wrong, what is a good thing, what is a bad thing, that's just kind of like kind of guides a lot of us in life in terms of some things we engage in, some things we don't, simply because of our morality. And when you talk about how we come to develop our morality, what we found was depending on the maturational stage of the human organism, you will have a different level of moral understanding. And as a result of that moral understanding relative to their age, they are going to see the world and engage the world in a different manner at 2 years of age, 3 years of age, versus you with someone engaging the world at 16 years of age. Just on moral development alone. There are other developments, but just moral development is a heavy contributor to our perspectives. How do we develop our morals? If you're 3 years old, and there's been case studies on this. If you care to know more about this, and I highly recommend reading his work. He was someone that I studied heavily, I believe in my graduate years, as a matter of fact, developmental psychology. His name was Lawrence Kohlberg. He has a model called the developmental stage, no, the stages of moral development. That's what it's called, the stages of moral development. What he's going to do is he's going to walk you from the time at a certain age all the way up until the time that you turn 16, 17, 18 years of age. He's going to be able to show you exactly how you develop your sense of right and wrong. And it's relative also to the age that you are. Put it in layman's terms, in a short and easy way to explain it. When you're 3 years old, if I ask you, little Ronnie, oh Lord, I hope ain't no little Ronnies out there. Little Ronnie, why did you take the candy? And let's say he's 3 years old. He will say, because I wanted it. He's 4 years old, 5 years old, because I wanted it. At 16 years of age, if you ask this person, why did, no, why didn't you take the candy? Or we can stick with the same model. Why did you take the candy? He is going to give different reasons of why he took the candy, the food, or what have you, than a 5-year-old would. Because you ask the 5-year-old, why did you steal the candy? Let's say steal. Why did you steal the candy? And the 5-year-old will go, and these are actual case studies, by the way. Why did you take the candy, 5-year-old? Or why did you steal it? Because I wanted it. Because at that time in your life, in terms of your psychosocial moral development, you can only understand from your point of view. Everyone has a perspective. Isn't that what we just got through talking about? Perspectives. You can only understand from your point of view when you are about 4 or 5 years old. You have to be taught things like sharing, empathy. You don't just naturally have you have the capacity, but you don't have the natural inclination to want to give, because your first instinct is to keep. So as a child at 5 years of age, I saw it, I wanted it, I got it, I took it. And you have to teach them, no, you don't do that. You don't take what belongs to you or what have you. But you have to teach them on a level that a 5-year-old can understand, because they only understand the world from their perspective. The 16-year-old, why did you steal the candy? The 16-year-old, I stole the food, the candy, because I have a little brother at home and a mom at home, and we're poor and we don't have anything to eat. And I just came in to try to steal something, anything to try to get us, something in our bellies because we're hungry. That's why I took it. Now, Don't laugh at that example because you've never been in a third world country. If you have, that is a very accurate, applicable example, and it's real. You're just thinking in terms of 16-year-olds don't think like that because you're thinking from an American Eurocentric perspective. But there are places where people have a community in terms of their thinking. Their thinking is global. So when they do things, they don't do things based on what they want for themselves. They do things based on how it benefits the group because the way I behave and affect others affects the group. So what it doesn't matter what I want in and of myself, only insofar as it serves the group. That's the level of moral thinking that Lawrence Kohlberg is saying is the highest level of morality because you're not considering yourself. Your thinking is considering others. And when you consider others, that requires you to totally abandon yourself and take the perspective of another and how it will affect them. This is the developmental process of how we develop our stages of morality. And depending on what stage of morality that you graduate to or remain stagnant in, greatly influences your perspective and how you see things. And that is why I guarantee you, if you look at where you are on this level of moral development, you may find why you've had certain problems in your life, certain failed relationships, certain traits such as an inability to communicate effectively, your inability to have empathy, your ability to cross boundaries consistently, habitually, without no regard. Look at your stage of morality. Look at your moral development. And that'll explain, that'll tell us a whole lot about you. Now, taking another person's perspective or a group's perspective is vital. And I want us to hold that in this left hand because I'm going to take that turn that I told you about. I named this episode Babies in Bathwater because there's an old saying, and I didn't realize how profound the saying is until preparing this talk with you. There's a saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It comes from an old German 1600 time period. I think his name was Thomas Kuhn, or I'm probably mixing them up, but nonetheless, it's from Germany back in the 1600s. It's a statement that has been misinterpreted and misapplied or misunderstood for so long, and that's not the important part. The important part is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What it's implying is when you're washing your baby, and in those days, they would wash the baby inside of a huge basin, and the baby's in there, and you're washing the baby, and the dirt's coming off the baby, and you see all the dirt on, floating around the water, and you're, thinking, oh my goodness, this water is nasty. But your baby's clean and it came off of them, but the water's nasty. And what you would do is you would pick up the entire basin because you're trying to get rid of the dirty water, and you throw baby and bath water out the window, trying to get rid of the dirty water. But in doing so, you got rid of what was most important of why the water was even there, which was the baby. The baby was the essential part of this relationship between this water, this basin, and ourselves. That's why we were here, to wash our baby. And here we were so caught up in the dirty water that we forgot about what was important and tossed it all out the window. So what that old adage is implying is, don't sacrifice the useful with the unusable and throw it all away. Extract what is useful, whatever is unusable, discard that. But make no mistake about it, the baby is the useful part. If the baby is the important part, then save what's most important and just get rid of everything else that doesn't matter. I think personally that if you apply that to real everyday life, it is for that reason I don't have a problem with anyone in any political affiliation that they may totally have an allegiance to for whatever their reasons, have whatever particular position or slant that they may have. I don't have a problem with that at all. What I do have a problem with is when you have two organizations, ways of thinking, political, philosophical inclinations, when they are unable to dialogue with each other because of their adherence to their positions, what I hear is dogma. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I have gone on record personally to say, given the options we have and the climate that we're in terms of our geopolitical partners, I think that there's one particular candidate that is better than another in this country. That is not to say that I believe that this individual is a better choice in terms of every position that they may stand on. But I am mature enough to look at something from a different point of view that may normally differ from my own and give it merit and say, you know what? I normally don't agree with this particular group, or I do normally particularly agree with this. I do agree with this group. But on this particular issue, I'm aligned to the issue, and I believe that they have the proper course to that issue. Two things can be true at the same time. I just told you we both saw a car wreck. And depending on the position you were sitting on will determine what wreck you saw. But just because you gave an account for the wreck you saw, it doesn't invalidate the other wreck in terms of, the wreck that the other person saw. Same thing in politics. Same thing in religion. Same thing in addiction. And addiction hits home for me personally on multiple levels. Because a person that may have an addiction, they already have a condition. And if you want to really reach them, abandon your perspective. Take their perspective. Take their position. I haven't eaten in 5 days. I'm dirty. I'm cold. I don't have a place to stay. The people that I love, I have lost, whether through my own actions or involuntary. I have lost. That's the point. I have lost. And in order to cope, this is what I need. This is the only thing that's helping the pain. If you want to reach a person that is in that condition, let them know I've been there. Or even if you didn't have an addiction in your life, the mere fact you can let them know, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I don't have a personal experience with what you're talking about, but I understand. I think we would see less disagreements if we understood how to take another person's position. Because we would open ourselves to experiences we normally would not experience or be aware of. If you want to know how important perspective taking is, I promised you I would show you the application and the importance of perspective taking and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't have time to go into the last 500 years of astrophysics, but if you're that interested, by all means, I want you to research a gentleman by the name of Johannes Kepler. I'm sorry, Nicholas Copernicus. And what Nicholas Copernicus did was he explained the universe around late 1400s, early 1500s. He was trying to explain the universe, and he supplied Europe with one of its first early workable models of what the solar system that we currently live in, what that looked like. And his work really, really was a huge contribution to understanding that we actually go around the sun. And just by him just using observation, he was able to say, hey, man, we go around the sun. But there were some other things he explained that just didn't quite add up. And it didn't explain a couple of other things that was going on in our solar system. But he says we're going around the sun, and that was the model for a long time. So we're going around the sun, but that's the model. We're thinking in terms of science. About 30 years after his death, a dude named Johannes Kepler came along. And Kepler started explaining things about the solar system, about the planets that was really important and how they moved. But his measurements were off. He was right in principle, but wrong in measurement. And his theory or view of the solar system radically differed from Nicholas Copernicus's view of the solar system. This is something that is called the law of incommensurability. The law of incommensurability basically means no matter what you do to this prevailing model theory, you cannot reconcile it with this model theory. Because based on the data given of what makes this model work and this model work, the two cannot become commensurable. They cannot agree. For every hot you say, I'm going to say cold. For every model for everything that my model says water, my model is going to say sun, light. For every blue that this model shows gray. They will never, ever, ever be able to communicate with each other. That is the law of incommensurability. And Europe, for a very long time, lived under those prevailing models of the solar system until a young man named Isaac Newton came along and looked at the models from Copernicus and pulled out the truth that yes, we do go around the sun. He looks at the model of Johannes Kepler based on how the planets are. Yes, they have to be round, and the way that they move is off. But he's right. They are more round, if you will. So we have these round things going around the sun, and Isaac Newton says, "Thank you, Copernicus, for the sun, us going around the sun. Thank you, Kepler, for how planets are shaped and different orbits. And you both were absolutely correct in those aspects, and you're no longer commensurable. I'm sorry, you're no longer incommensurable. You're in agreement because now I'm introducing something called gravity. And gravity alone explained the entire celestial bodies and their movements in our known solar system." Do you see how important it is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Had that occurred, we never would have had the model from Copernicus, the truths of Johannes Kepler, so that there can be a reconciliation of the truth of our solar system based on the measurements of Isaac Newton. That is the importance of being able to see something from someone else's point of view and extrapolating the usefulness, discarding the non-usefulness without being at odds with the individual that you have a disagreement with. That is the importance of perspective taking and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a good day. In all things, God is everything.